The exclusive golf retreat at Mar-a-Lago was supposed to be Donald Trump's triumphant return to political relevance, a weekend of strategy, donors, and power plays with his closest allies. The guest list read like a who's who of conservative politics. Senators, billionaire donors, and media figures all gathered to plan Trump's political comeback. But what started as a celebration of loyalty and power would end in the most explosive betrayal in modern American political history. Because sitting at that very table, laughing at Trump's jokes and sharing his strategies, was Pam Bondi, the woman Trump trusted most, his former Attorney General nominee, and the person who had just spent 6 months secretly compiling the most damaging evidence against him ever assembled. And hidden in her designer briefcase, locked away from Trump's suspicion, was a list so explosive it would not only destroy his political future, but potentially send him to prison for the rest of his life. The complete Jeffrey Epstein client list, with Trump's name appearing 47 times across 2 decades of visits, payments, and private arrangements. The irony was devastating. While Trump was planning his political resurrection, the woman he trusted most was about to become his executioner. The morning of March 18, 2025, dawned clear and warm over Palm Beach, Florida. Mar-a-Lago was buzzing with activity as staff prepared for what Trump had billed as the most important political gathering since Reagan's California kitchen cabinet. The resort's ballroom had been converted into a war room, complete with whiteboards covered in electoral maps, polling data, and fundraising targets. The guest list was deliberately small and exclusive. Only Trump's most trusted advisors and biggest donors had received invitations. Donald Trump, now 78 and still smarting from his 2024 electoral defeat, had spent months planning this weekend. His political operation needed restructuring, his legal troubles required strategic coordination, and his fundraising machine demanded fresh momentum. The Mar-a-Lago retreat was designed to accomplish all 3 goals while reinforcing the loyalty of his inner circle. The timing seemed perfect. Trump's legal cases were progressing slowly. His poll numbers among Republicans remained strong, and his grip on the party apparatus appeared unshakable. Several potential 2028 primary opponents had already signaled they wouldn't challenge him if he decided to run again. The weekend was meant to be a victory lap disguised as strategic planning. Among the invited guests, none held a more privileged position than Pam Bondi. The 59-year-old former Florida Attorney General had been Trump's choice for Attorney General before her disastrous confirmation hearing ended that nomination. But rather than abandoning her, Trump had brought her into his inner circle as a senior advisor and legal strategist. Her loyalty was unquestioned, her discretion absolute, and her access to Trump's most sensitive information complete. What Trump didn't know was that Pam Bondi's loyalty had been shattered 6 months earlier by a discovery that changed everything she thought she knew about the man she had defended for years. The revelation had come during what should have been routine legal preparation for Trump's ongoing civil cases. As a senior legal advisor, Bondi had unrestricted access to Trump's files, correspondence, and business records. She was reviewing financial documents related to his various properties when she stumbled across a set of records that stopped her cold. Hidden in a folder marked Private Aviation Expenses 2018 to 2023 were detailed flight logs, payment records, and correspondence that told a story Bondi could barely comprehend. The documents revealed that Trump had maintained an ongoing relationship with Jeffrey Epstein that extended far beyond their well-known social connections from the 1990s and early 2000s. The records showed regular payments to shell companies connected to Epstein's network, flight manifests placing Trump on Epstein's aircraft multiple times between 2018 and 2019, well after Epstein's 2008 conviction and supposed social ostracism. And most damaging of all, a detailed client list that Epstein had apparently maintained as insurance against prosecution. The list contained 147 names of prominent politicians, business leaders, and celebrities who had allegedly paid for services provided through Epstein's network. Trump's name appeared 47 times, with payments totaling over $2.3 million between 2016 and 2019. The entries were specific: dates, amounts, locations, and coded references to services provided. Bondi had spent her entire career in law enforcement. She knew what she was looking at, and she knew the implications were staggering. This wasn't just about Trump's moral character or personal conduct. This was evidence of potential criminal activity that could result in federal charges and decades in prison. Her first instinct had been to confront Trump directly, to demand an explanation that might somehow make sense of what appeared to be incontrovertible evidence of his involvement in Epstein's operation. But as she studied the documents more carefully, she realized the scope of what she had discovered went far beyond Trump's personal conduct. The client list included several sitting senators, federal judges, and cabinet officials from multiple administrations. It appeared that Epstein's network had been systematically documenting their clients' activities, creating a comprehensive blackmail operation that reached into the highest levels of American government. Bondi found herself in an impossible position. As Trump's advisor, she owed him loyalty and confidentiality. As a former prosecutor and officer of the court, she had an obligation to report evidence of criminal activity. And as an American citizen, she had a duty to protect the integrity of democratic institutions from the kind of corruption and compromise that the Epstein list revealed. She made the decision that would define the rest of her life. She would document everything, verify the evidence through independent sources, and when the time was right, she would ensure that the truth came to light regardless of the personal and political consequences. Over the following 6 months, Bondi had used her access to Trump's inner circle to gather additional evidence and corroborate the information in the Epstein files. She secretly photographed documents, recorded conversations, and collected physical evidence that supported the allegations in the client list. She also reached out to federal investigators through intermediaries, providing anonymous tips that led to the reopening of several dormant cases related to Epstein's network. Her information had been instrumental in securing new indictments against several lesser figures in the operation, though the major players remained untouched. The Mar-a-Lago weekend represented the perfect opportunity to complete her investigation and finally reveal the truth. Trump would be relaxed and off guard, surrounded by allies and believing himself safe from surveillance or betrayal. It was the ideal setting for gathering the final pieces of evidence she needed to build an airtight case. Bondi arrived at Mar-a-Lago on Friday afternoon. Her designer briefcase, containing a hidden recording device and copies of the most damaging documents she had collected. To outside observers, she appeared to be the same loyal advisor who had stood by Trump through his legal troubles and political setbacks. But inside, she was preparing for the most important performance of her life. The weekend began with a private dinner for the inner circle. Trump was in his element, holding court at the head of a long table overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. The conversation ranged from polling data to fundraising strategies to plans for building a media empire that would cement his political legacy. Bondi participated naturally in the discussions, asking the right questions and offering the expected support for Trump's various schemes. But she was also carefully documenting everything she heard, knowing that some of the evening's conversations would eventually become evidence in federal court. The most revealing moment came when Senator Blake Morrison of Texas asked Trump about his legal strategy for the ongoing investigations into his business dealings. Trump's response was more candid than anyone expected. "Blake, let me tell you something," Trump said, his voice taking on the conspiratorial tone that his inner circle knew well. "These prosecutors think they're so smart, but they have no idea what they're really dealing with. I got information that could bring down half of Washington if I ever decided to use it." He paused for dramatic effect, clearly enjoying the attention he was receiving from the table full of powerful allies. Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the only one keeping records, if you know what I mean. Sometimes the best defense is making sure the other side knows you could destroy them if they push too hard. The comment sent a chill through Bondi, who recognized it as essentially an admission that Trump possessed compromising information about other political figures, information that likely came from the same network that had compromised him. Senator Morrison pressed for more details, but Trump simply smiled and changed the subject. However, the implication was clear. Trump was using blackmail or the threat of blackmail to protect himself from prosecution. Saturday morning brought golf, strategy sessions, and more opportunities for Bondi to gather evidence. During a break in the formal meetings, she found herself alone with Trump in his private office, a situation she had been hoping for since arriving at Mar-a-Lago. Pam, Trump said, settling into his chair behind the massive desk that dominated the room. I want to talk to you about something important. You've been incredibly loyal through all of this legal nonsense, and I want you to know how much I appreciate it. Bondi activated the recording device hidden in her briefcase and prepared for what she hoped would be Trump's final confession. Of course, Mr. President, she replied. You know you can count on me. Trump leaned forward, his expression becoming more serious than Bondi had seen it in months. Here's the thing, Pam. These prosecutors are never going to stop coming after me. They're convinced I'm some kind of criminal mastermind, and they'll keep digging until they find something they can use against me. He paused, seemingly weighing his words carefully. But what they don't understand is that everyone in this town has secrets. Everyone. And some of us have been smart enough to document those secrets for our own protection. Bondi felt her heart racing, but she kept her expression neutral and encouraging. What kind of documentation? She asked. Trump smiled, the expression of a man who believed he held all the cards. Let's just say that Jeffrey Epstein wasn't the only one who understood the value of insurance policies. When you're operating at our level, you need leverage over the people who might try to destroy you. The admission was everything Bondi had hoped for and feared. Trump was essentially confessing to maintaining blackmail material on other political figures, possibly including some of the same information that appeared in the Epstein files. But don't you worry about someone turning that around on you? Bondi asked, playing the role of the concerned advisor. Trump's confidence was absolute. Pam, I've been playing this game longer than most of these people have been alive. The key is making sure you have more leverage than anyone else. And trust me, I do. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Trump providing increasingly specific details about his insurance policies and his strategy for using compromising information to protect himself from prosecution. By the time they rejoined the larger group, Bondi had recorded enough evidence to support multiple federal charges against the former president. Saturday evening's dinner was even more lavish than Friday's, with Trump clearly enjoying his role as the host and strategic mastermind of the conservative movement. The conversation turned to plans for the 2028 election, with several attendees assuming Trump would be the inevitable nominee. It was during this dinner that Bondi made her decision to accelerate her timeline. Originally, she had planned to wait until after the weekend to reveal her evidence, giving herself time to coordinate with federal investigators and ensure her own safety. But Trump's growing confidence and his casual discussions of blackmail convinced her that waiting any longer could allow him to cause even more damage. As the evening wound down and guests began retiring to their rooms, Bondi approached Trump with a request that she knew would intrigue him. Mr. President, she said, I've been working on something that I think you'll find very interesting. Could we meet in your office tomorrow morning before the final session? I have some documents I'd like to show you. Trump, always curious about new information that might benefit him, readily agreed. They scheduled the meeting for 8 a.m., giving Bondi the night to make her final preparations. Bondi spent Saturday night in her Mar-a-Lago guest room, making copies of the most damaging documents and preparing for the confrontation that would end Trump's political career. She also sent encrypted messages to contacts in federal law enforcement, alerting them that major developments were imminent and that they should be prepared to act quickly. Sunday morning arrived clear and warm, with most of the retreat's attendees planning to stay for a final strategy session before departing that afternoon. Trump was in an excellent mood, energized by the weekend's discussions and optimistic about his political future. At exactly 8 a.m., Bondi knocked on the door of Trump's private office. He greeted her with his usual enthusiasm, clearly expecting to receive some new intelligence or strategic insight that would further strengthen his position. Pam, come in. What's this exciting information you wanted to share? Bondi entered the office carrying her briefcase and wearing an expression that Trump might have recognized as dangerous if he hadn't been so confident in her loyalty. Mr. President, she began, what I'm about to show you will change everything we've discussed this weekend. She opened her briefcase and removed a thick folder containing photocopies of the Epstein client list and supporting documentation. 6 months ago, while reviewing your legal files, I discovered these documents. I've spent the intervening time verifying their authenticity and gathering additional evidence. Trump's expression shifted from curiosity to concern as he saw the gravity in Bondi's demeanor. "What kind of documents?" he asked, though something in his voice suggested he was beginning to suspect what was coming. Bondi placed the folder on Trump's desk and opened it to reveal the first page of the client list. Trump's name was clearly visible, along with dates, amounts, and coded descriptions of services provided. The color drained from Trump's face as he realized what he was looking at. For several long seconds, he stared at the documents without speaking, his mind clearly racing to understand how his most trusted advisor had come to possess this information. "Where did you get this?" he finally managed to ask. "From your own files," Bondi replied, "hidden in a folder marked Private Aviation Expenses, along with payment records, flight logs, and correspondence that corroborates every entry on this list." Trump's shock was giving way to anger, but Bondi wasn't finished. 47 separate transactions over 3 years, Donald. $2.3 million in payments to Jeffrey Epstein's network. Well, after his conviction. Well, after you claimed to have cut ties with him. She pulled out additional documents, spreading them across the desk, so Trump could see the full scope of what she had discovered. Flight logs showing you on his aircraft. Financial records showing payments to his shell companies. And this, she held up a particularly damaging document, is a signed agreement acknowledging the services provided and your understanding of the confidentiality requirements. Trump slumped in his chair, the fight going out of him as he realized the hopelessness of his situation. The evidence was overwhelming, and it had come from his own files. There would be no claiming it was fabricated or planted by enemies. "Pam," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "you've been like family to me. How could you do this?" Bonnie's response was calm but firm. "Because I swore an oath to uphold the law, Donald. And because the American people deserve to know the truth about the man who wants to be their president again." She began gathering the documents, preparing for the next phase of her plan. "This information has already been provided to federal investigators. Arrest warrants are being prepared as we speak. Your political career is over, and your criminal liability is just beginning." Trump tried one last desperate gambit. "Pam, think about what you're doing. This would destroy both of us. And it won't just hurt me. There are other names on that list. Powerful people who will do anything to keep this quiet." Bondi had anticipated this argument. "That's exactly why it needs to come out, Donald. This isn't just about you. This is about a systematic corruption of our government that has been hidden for too long." She closed her briefcase and headed for the door. "The final strategy session starts in an hour. I suggest you use that time to call your lawyers. You're going to need them." As Bondi left Trump's office, she could hear him frantically making phone calls behind the closed door. But it was too late for damage control or strategic maneuvering. The evidence was already in the hands of federal investigators, and the wheels of justice had been set in motion. The final strategy session of the Mar-a-Lago retreat began at 10 a.m., but Trump never appeared. Word spread quickly among the attendees that something significant had happened, though the details remained unclear. Several guests reported seeing Trump's lawyers arriving at the resort, followed by what appeared to be federal agents. By noon, the retreat had effectively ended, with guests hastily checking out and departing Mar-a-Lago without the usual ceremonial farewells. The atmosphere of celebration and strategic planning had been replaced by one of crisis and confusion. At 2 p.m., Pam Bondi held a press conference at a hotel in West Palm Beach, just miles from Mar-a-Lago. The room was packed with reporters who had gotten word that something major was about to break. "Ladies and gentlemen," Bondi began, "I'm here today to reveal information that I believe is essential to the American people's understanding of corruption at the highest levels of our government." She proceeded to outline, in careful detail, the evidence she had discovered regarding Trump's involvement with Jeffrey Epstein's network. She provided copies of key documents to the assembled reporters and announced that the complete file had been turned over to federal investigators. The press conference was carried live on every major news network, and the reaction was immediate and explosive. Within hours, hashtag Epstein list was trending globally on social media, with millions of people sharing and discussing the revelations. Legal experts immediately recognized the significance of what Bondi had revealed. Former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance told MSNBC that this appears to be evidence of ongoing criminal activity that could result in federal charges for human trafficking, conspiracy, and racketeering. The political implications were equally staggering. Republican leaders who had been planning to support Trump's 2028 campaign began distancing themselves from him immediately. Several senators called for a full investigation, and at least 3 potential primary opponents announced they would definitely challenge Trump if he decided to run. But the most dramatic development came at 6 p.m. when federal agents arrested Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago on charges related to his involvement with Jeffrey Epstein's network. The former president was taken into custody without incident, though witnesses reported that he appeared shocked and defeated. The arrest marked the end of Trump's political career and the beginning of what would become one of the most significant criminal cases in American history. The evidence Bondi had provided led to a comprehensive investigation that ultimately implicated dozens of prominent figures in Epstein's network. For Pam Bondi, the decision to expose Trump had come at enormous personal cost. She faced death threats, lawsuits, and professional ostracism from many of her former allies. But she also received praise from law enforcement officials, legal scholars, and citizens who recognized the courage it had taken to put principle above loyalty. 6 months later, testifying as the star witness in Trump's federal trial, Bondi would reflect on the decision that had changed her life and potentially saved American democracy from a corrupted leader. "I spent my career believing that loyalty was the highest virtue in politics," she told the court. "But I learned that loyalty to the Constitution and to the rule of law must come before loyalty to any individual, no matter how powerful they may be." The Mar-a-Lago retreat that was supposed to launch Trump's political comeback had instead become the setting for his final downfall. And the woman he trusted most had become the instrument of justice that ensured he would never again have the opportunity to abuse the public trust. The golf weekend that began with such promise for Trump's future ended with him in federal custody, facing the prospect of spending the rest of his life in prison. It was a dramatic reminder that in America, no one, not even former presidents, is above the law when the evidence of their crimes finally comes to light. The secret Epstein list that Trump thought would protect him through blackmail had instead become the evidence that destroyed him. And Pam Bondi, the loyal advisor who was supposed to help him return to power, had instead ensured that his political career was over forever. In the end, the most important strategy session of the weekend hadn't taken place in Mar-a-Lago's conference rooms or on its golf course. It had happened in Trump's private office, where one woman's decision to choose justice over loyalty had changed the course of American history. The retreat was over, but the reckoning had just begun.